framing in 5 minutes. You know what I mean? Layouts. You have layouts for two reasons, or two types. You got 16 inches on center and you got 24 inches on center. Why do we have those? Which one is for which?
24 is code, 16 is preferable.
24 is for non-bearing walls. 16 is bearing walls. You don't have bearing walls that are 24 inches on center. They might up here, but I don't think they do. I looked in the code book last night and they didn't. So anyway, these are for bearing walls. Why do we have that? Because when you have too much of a gap in between your plates and you're supporting a roof system, it's going to sag that plate. So they put it every 16 inches. That's why that's what code says is good. So when you pull your layout, this is the end of your board. Your layout is to not only support the roof, but it's also to hang drywall, hang shear, hang plywood, and everything that we get comes in 4x8 sheets, everything. So when you pull your 16 inches, they call that 16 inches on the center, but when you're running your layout, you need to actually back that up. So you pull your 16 inches right there, you back it up to 3/4 of an inch, so now you can run it, and they call it and go. 16 inches and go now, so now you can line it up. And the reason they do that is because if you were just to carry this all the way over, your sheet of drywall would actually stop right here. Does that make sense? So that's why or it would stop over it, I believe. So you back it up, and that's how you get that 4 foot to land on 4 foot. Because when you don't do that, and your drywaller has to cut every one of his sheets to land on it, you got an upset drywaller, and I've done it. I've done it to a drywaller before. You remember? So yeah.
I've done it to a couple of them. I've done it to myself too. So.
Right. But anyway, that's the way you should run your layout. Run it to 16 on center, back it up to 3/4 of an inch, and then you can run it and go. You call it and go, because now you've got 16 inches, and you guys know what this is? That's called a crow's foot. When you see this, and you come over that way, that is the point, and that is where your stud goes, correct? So it could be both ways. So if I was to run this, my point is here, and then you just put your X there. That is where your stud lines out. Everybody following? Anybody missing anything? All right, cool. So what we deal with commonly is floating walls. We don't, as a company, deal with structural. We really don't. We don't. I don't think I've built a bearing wall for you since I've been here. I haven't even.
Usually taking them out.
Yeah, right. So what we do here for our company is we usually do a lot of floating walls because we're in the basement. Floating walls, again, you're set up 16 on center. Down here, they call it a floater because you need to have your plate in case there's an earthquake or whatever, the ground moves. The way your basements are set up is the pad is poured separately from the stem. So your pad will rise or sink inside the stem wall. So down here, you got to have a plate. So this is a plate, this is a plate, and this is a plate. This bottom one is a pressure-treated plate, and you can only have pressure-treated plates on concrete. Or excuse me, you can only use pressure-treated plates on concrete. That's it. You cannot use a regular stud.
It is not code in Colorado that you have to use pressure-treated lumber.
But it's in our rules.
But you better use it.
You better use it.
Yeah.
In California, it is code, and they call it a mud seal out there.
Right. So this gap right here can be a minimum of 1 inch to a maximum of 4. Is that code?
I thought it was 3.
No,
Three
it's
and a
4.
half is about
I
right.
thought 2 was minimum.
No,
Depends on the county.
1 is minimum.
Depends on the county.
Yeah. 4.
Because
Maximum.
like Douglas County, I'm pretty sure is.
You'll know if you've maxed it out because your spikes won't touch.
You won't fit.
Sure, 6 inch. Yeah.
Right. So let's talk about spikes. See these spikes? You have to have one within 6 inches of the end of the break. This is called the break. Anytime you got an end, it's a break. So you have one, and now code says 3 foot, but we run them every 32 inches or every other bay. It just keeps it simple for you. You don't gotta pull out your tape measure. Just go every other bay, and you should be good. But remember, if you've got another wall coming up here and you're buttoned to this, you need to have another spike right here in this wall within 6 inches of this break. Everybody make sense? All right, moving on. You guys know what a California corner is? California corner is mainly for backing, really. I mean, because we're going to use it in the wall, but we're using it for backing so you can tie another wall into it, plus have the backing already available so you don't have to come back and put it on. This is a California. Now, this is a 2x4.
Can you explain what backing is?
Yeah, that's back here.
Oh, okay, sweet.
All right, so intersecting walls. There's a couple ways you can do it. You can do it with ladder blocking. Ladder blocking, so if I was going to run a wall this way into this wall right here, I have a choice. I can either take verticals, which is just another stud, and put it up there so I can attach my wall to it. Or I could take ladder blocking at every 2, 4, 6, and 8 feet. That is code. Or you could do channel blocking. This is a channel. What they do is they take two studs, put them back down next to each other, and put a flat one right in the center, and you just stick it right in your wall. You know, I mean that
That's looking down on.
this would
those
be,
would be
the
studs,
channel,
right?
correct?
Okay.
Step block stud.
Yes, step block stud, exactly.
You use a lot more 2x4s doing it than you would in the ladder.
And you use these on bearing walls. You should always use these on a bearing wall. Try not to do ladder blocking. You can get away with ladder blocking, but don't. You know, just be safe.
Question before we move on.
Talk to me.
If 24 inches is code for non-load bearing walls, why are we doing 16?
Because that's just how we roll.
That's right. but does everybody know the reason behind that? Why
So
that's
you
our
can't
recipe?
fail.
You get a
No
straight
matter what,
wall,
you're not gonna
there's
fail.
less flex in like drywall and things
Yeah,
like that. Especially
less
like
bowing in the
shifting
drywall.
in the,
Right.
in the ground for your slab. There's less chance that that's gonna buckle.
It makes sense. But to me, it's guaranteed not to fail inspection.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? At all times.
Yep.
At all
Can I
times.
make a quick point just on the framing?
Please.
You have highlighted numbers on your, just whoever doesn't know, you have highlighted numbers on your tape measure if you have any sort of a decent framing tape measure.
Mhm.
Very red.
So whenever you're pulling layout, you don't even have to do math. It's all just laid out for you. And then like Jesse said, it's 3/4 forward or 3/4
Yeah.
back.
With diamonds.
But,
Th-
yeah,
those
it's like a
diamonds
little
are
triangle.
anchors. Yeah, they're for anchor bolts, exactly. Anything else?
Tape measure's a smart thing.
Wonderful.
I guess along those lines, just for clarification, you said you pulled it here, and then do you pull your tape from that point? Do you
Yes,
put a
so
nail in it? Like,
That's
what do you
exactly
do?
what happens. So
Okay.
when you pull here and then when you back it up, you'll put a nail right there. And then you can pull your tape. You can hook your tape on it and just go. You know, or you can hold it down if you want. It's up to you. And normally, best case scenario is you would have both plates together, your top and your bottom plates together with a nail in it, and you would come through, run your layout, take your square
Squeeze
all the
through.
way down. So and then you can just go up and down with it. But in basements and what we do, we don't actually have all that room. So we do a lot of stick frame. You know, so this is actually if you could lower it on the floor and be real easy with it. Does
So
that
you
make
could
sense?
also do what Munson was talking about, where you just go 3/4 on each side of the red. All
Yes,
the way down,
you
right?
can do
You
that.
Just pull that.
You can do that.
Two options.
Okay, this is the no bueno page. Okay,
I like it.
see this? That's no bueno. It's no good. You are not allowed to do this. That is a fail. So what I have here is I got two walls coming together, right? Now when you've seen two walls together, they have to be, their stud needs to be there. It has to happen. You cannot have a break in the plate.
Willie, can you see, bro? You wanna get where you can see?
You cannot have a break. This is called a break. You cannot have a break in the plate at the top and at the bottom, or at the top and the bottom in the same spot. This, by code, must be 2 foot over. By code, that is code. What I like to do is call it 4 foot, because 4 foot is easier to work with than a 2 foot. It's a lot stronger, that type of deal. Does that make sense?
Also follows your 16 on center.
Correct. Correct. This thing, this is a bearing wall, okay? Double top plate. You are not allowed to split your double top plates together. That is illegal. You must have a 2 foot lap, okay? What do we go with? 4 foot. Be safe. Just go with 4 foot, okay? Doors. Framing out for doors.
Everybody pay attention.
Okay, doors come in, you know, all sizes, whatever. Whenever you're framing out for a door, say we got a 30-inch door, you are automatically 2 inches, no matter what, around all openings, the top and the sides. You need 2 inches, and here's the reason why. Your door is 30 inches, not the framing for the door, not the jamb for the door. The jamb for the door actually is 31 and dang near 7/8, or dang near 3/4, excuse me. Because you've got a 30-inch door, you've got an 1/8 on each side for reveal, for gappage, and then you've got 3/4 and 3/4 for the jamb. The last quarter that you have is for your shim. You know, you really want your frame as tight as possible, but you only want it like at a quarter. Because anything else after that, if you're just using shims to hold your door in, that door is going to be worthless in about 2 years. You know, you're just going to beat it, especially if you have kids. So basically what I'm saying is if you have a 32-inch door, you frame it at 34. If you have a 36-inch door, frame it at 38. Does that make sense? Everybody
Always
understand
2
that?
inches
Add 2
over.
inches.
Always 2 inches.
You don't talk about height.
Height, I go with, well, so the height is different. With the way we do our bifolds and stuff like that, we trim our own now. So we actually bring our height down to exact on those types of doors. But on these, yeah, I keep it 2 inches over. What are you talking about?
What is the height? So we've got a
Oh,
six-
I'm
six-
sorry,
six-
82 inches. Standard door is 80 inches. And so you frame it out to 82 inches. Right? Okay, so let's talk about that for a second. Now, when you're framing for your door, if you've got concrete that's kind of at a slope, you need to go to the highest point, whichever the highest side is on, and then you pull your 82. Do not pull your 82 from both sides. You pull it from the highest point pull it to 82 up, then you take your level, shoot it across, make your mark. That's where you drop your header at. Make sense? Now, what we do at Home Fix too is we always do a king stud and a trimmer. Always. If you can. We generally try to do it. There have been cases where I couldn't. So the king stud is the one that goes from the plate to the top plate. Your trimmer is the second one that holds your header up. That's actually the jack stud is what you attach your door to. Makes sense? Everybody on point? This is a cripple. Goes above your door. Follows the same layout. You are on a 16-inch layout. And even if this stud and this jack stud don't line up in your layout, it needs to continue across on the layout that you've got already laid out on your plates. You cannot skip layout. You cannot. You can add to it. You can add all you want to
Can you
it.
explain why?
You can't. Why you can't skip layout? Because you'll fail. It becomes weed.
Is there a drywall reason?
Well, it's all drywall. Everything's drywall. It's all structural and drywall. It's all for. 16 inches on center. That's for your drywall. 2 foot on center is for your drywall.
So quick side code thing. A lot of doors will require an 1.5 inch undercut.
Yes.
For bedrooms that don't have air returns, that's something that they'll require at RBD. Your typical door is 80 inches. If you have an 1.5 inch undercut, that gets you to 81.5, and then you have a 3/4 inch jam up top, they'll actually bring you to 82.25. So just be careful if there's on the plans that calls for 1.5 inch undercut, because that means you can't trim that door.
Right.
And then I'd probably frame it at 83, because even the smallest trim at 2.25 will cover an inch gap.
Right.
So it's always better to go a little bit over,
A little over.
than a little under, because then you're cutting down all your doors, and
Yep.
it's tough.
Make sure it's always for flooring too, since I've always done
With the
mine
door
at
and
83.
the flooring.
Yeah.
You always do yours at 83? That's
Yeah,
probably.
6 to 11.
Because if you have to, you can drop that door down from the header a little bit, but if you need to move it up,
Then you're cutting the bottoms. It's
And the
just
top doesn't do any support really, it's the sides. That
Correct.
makes sense.
because I never nail on the top of the door anyway.
I have a question, Jesse.
Talk to me.
Do we need headers on non-load bearing walls? Basements?
Non-load bearing wall is basically just a wall. So no, you don't really need a header, but yeah, you need something to nail to.
For sure, but we don't need like a double 2x6.
So that's where I was going next. So you have different types of headers. You have box headers. You have channel headers. You have all kinds of different headers. Anything, if we were in a bearing wall, anything over 4 foot, you have to turn your 2x4 on its side, put plywood in between it, and then another 2x4. Anything over 4 foot, that is code. You have to do that. But what we deal with down in this downstairs basement, no, you need just a single flat 2x4. As long as you're on layout, then you're fine. Makes sense.
Yeah.
Everybody got it? Okay. Things we're not talking about. Cabin tying. You guys know what cabin tying is? Cabin tying is when you have 2 walls intersecting together, and you remember we had the double top plate? Well, if I'm tying into this one, my top plate has to be cut 3/4 or 3 inches back, 3.5 inches back, so my next top plate goes in and sits on top of that wall, and you tie it together. You just
Overlap,
you're
like a
interlocking.
log cabin.
Yep, exactly.
Okay.
That is a cabin type. You guys know what a rake wall is? Rake wall is one of these walls.
also known as a gable.
Boom! No, that's not a gable. It's just a rake.
Well, the gable is the roof line.
The gable is just the end of it's the style, right? Yeah. So I guess you can call it that.
Gable roof.
You can call it that, I guess. But a rake is like, this is the rake, an angle. It's just an angled wall. That's all a rake wall is.
Stairwells.
They're tough to build.
Actually, they're not. They're really easy if you know what you're doing. Box headers. This is a box header. That is a box header.
That wasn't even intentional. That was just like.
I swear to God, it's true. That is a box header. We don't use box headers because we don't do structural framing. That is for like when you're really framing a house and you're using 2x6 walls. You don't put 2x6 plywood, 2x6 plywood. It won't match up. So that you have to build a box header. We don't use these. All of this is 2x4 all the way around. 2x4, 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 and then just put it in there. You set it in there, and you're fine. We don't deal with those. Headers and bearing walls over 4 foot. We already discussed that. Let's talk about backing. Backing is miserable, but you need it. You have to have it, and it's for your drywall. There's a code to it, believe it or not. You cannot, for drywall, you can't, anything over 6 inches, you have to have something for you to screw to. That is actually a code. So if your drywall is coming over to here and you're 6 inches short of that very last stud, you have to put another stud in there. You got to put backing in there. Okay, and that's where we use a lot of or cut back the stud. And that's where we use a lot of our California corners, is right in the corner. Backing needs to be everywhere. Anywhere where drywall needs to be screwed so it's not flapping in the wind, you need backing. You need to put it in there, or else it's going to flap. The first time somebody goes and puts their hand on it, it's gonna break. Anything else I'm missing about backing?
Watch your corners.
What?
Corners.
Yes, yeah.
It's always the number one spot.
Yeah.
Over back.
That and the lines up on the ceiling. When you don't, if you think you can run it along the truss, you never can. Or if you think you can run along the joist, it doesn't work out very well. It's always a pain in the butt for the drywall. It always is, because now you've given him that much to screw to. So you're kind of you're not setting him up for success, if that makes sense.
2468 still.
Yes, 2468. That's 2 foot up, 6 foot. Yeah, right.
To the center of your board. 1 foot board, centered on 2 foot, 4 foot, 6 foot.
Questions?
Can
Does it
you
matter-
tell? Go ahead.
Does it matter what material you use for backing? Like, say you have some scrap.
You can use
half-inch
pressure
OSB.
treated. I don't care if you use plywood, as
Yeah.
long as it doesn't.
Plywood's great.
As long as it doesn't stick out farther than where the drywall needs to be.
Yeah.
You can use anything. Anything.
So that's a good opportunity to get rid of scraps.
Scraps.
basically, is what it
Yes,
is.
sir. Very nice.
Nice. Can you tell us about fire blocking?
Fire blocking. Okay. So where I'm from, fire blocking is anytime you have drywall and they lay it on, because we have drywall code. In Arizona, I'm not sure how it works here, but I know in Arizona that anytime you have 2 pieces of drywall right here, you have to have wood behind there, so no gust, no wind, no air can get up through there into the cavity behind the drywall, where it carries up into the next floor. So what we do is we do something called draft stop. And anytime air can get up into another floor or move anywhere at all into anywhere, you need to stop it. So what we do is we take insulation. Insulation, the code is you have to 16 inches down from the top of the wall, and the inspector is not allowed to come up and push on that insulation and push it in more than 40%. So what we do is we take about a 2 foot piece, you roll up the top 5 or 6 inches of it, shove it up in the wall, make sure it's 16 inches down, and just push on it. On a long wall, on a long run, if this was a 25 foot wall, every 10 feet you got to have a strip in there to keep air from moving behind the wall. Does that make sense? Soffits, we do a lot of soffits. Soffits are a nightmare if you let them be. Soffits, okay, so a soffit is basically something that you're just covering piping. It's just a channel or a raceway that you're covering piping, you're hiding electrical, you're just hiding something. So whenever you see a soffit, it's not because it's designed that way. It's usually not, unless they really want it, which is unusual. So soffits, you can either build mini walls and hang them up in the ceiling and they try to shoot them back to the ceiling, or you could do what most of us like to do, and that's shoot a straight line down where you want the soffit at, run a 2x4, hang your plywood cut to your desired height, and then shoot that to the studs up that you have on the bottom. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Only because you guys know what I'm talking about, but these people don't.
These people.
Me?
Awesome.
The camera, bro. Come on.
And I believe fire blocking here in Colorado, at least, I think it's if you have over a 12-foot wall, actual fire blocking, like or horizontal fire blocking, is anything over a 12-foot wall at 10 feet or under, you have to lay a 2x4 in that channel, again, to block the airflow from happening. And I think
So
they have
that's
to be,
over 12 foot. You're saying that?
I believe it's over. I could be wrong on that,
Right.
but and we never mess with it, so it's not even something you
Right.
know. But a wall over 12 feet, every bay has to have a stud 10 feet or under, laid horizontally to cut off that airflow, and I believe every bay has to be offset by a foot, which is why you always see that fire blocking staggered.
Huh.
But
That's good to know.
fire blocking isn't with insulation; it's actually with horizontal 2x4s.
Well, that's what I was talking about in Tucson, because we had to have them on every seam that the drywall was connected at. You know, at every 4 foot, or wherever your drywall was at.
Boy, that's wow,
Yeah.
that's
Oh,
amazing.
that's not even the worst of it.
California sounds
Then we had to
fire
come back
blocking.
through with fire blocking caulk, the red stuff, and caulk the whole thing in.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I mean, again, that's something that we don't do here.
So like in California, it was all about hurricanes or earthquake ties.
Yeah.
I mean, you had to tie every Simpsons were our best friend. Man.
Yeah.
It was like
Yeah.
you name it, you have to install it.
Cool.
Awesome.
Any more
Awesome.
questions? Good.
Awesome.
Good.